Anti-war demonstrations continue on many American university campuses, and it was another day of chaos. A lot of action happened at the University of California in Los Angeles before dawn, where the police in large numbers entered into the campus. They stormed into the campus and then set upon the protesters. They cleared an anti-war demonstration encampment where clashes had taken place a day before. The American president has condemned the violence, saying that only peaceful protest is protected under the American Constitution.
Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law.
So this is what has played out in the University of California, where hundreds of police in riot gear muscled into an encampment. They fired flashbangs in order to disperse the crowd of anti-war demonstrators who had said that they would not leave. Many of the anti-war demonstrators also formed human chains as the police resorted to the use of force. Dozens of anti-war demonstrators were arrested, while the protest site was eventually cleared.
It's very inspiring to see that the students are not backing down, that they are, they're putting a lot on the line. They're risking arrest, they're risking their careers and their futures to actually send this message. And it's very important and it's very inspiring. And it's outrageous that first the LAPD was sent in and then the CHP, and that now they're moving in with all this less lethal, weapons for peaceful protesters, and so this is illegitimate.
Now, the police was in fact called onto the campus a day after pro-Israeli protesters attacked the encampment established by the anti-war demonstrating protesters. The people wearing masks and also carrying Israeli flags tried to tear down the camp. They assaulted the students with pepper spray, sticks, stones and also metal fencing. Fireworks were also set off into the anti-war demonstrating camp. The demonstrators then rebuilt the makeshift barriers around their tents. The unrest lasted for several hours before the police eventually intervened, although it is the job of the police to provide security there. And it took many hours before the police came in and intervened and tried to bring things under order. On Tuesday, similar scenes had been witnessed at the Columbia University in New York, where hundreds of police broke into a besieged academic building that had been occupied by the anti-war demonstrators. Student rallies have spread to dozens of schools across the United States in recent days, expressing opposition to the Israeli onslaught in the Gaza Strip. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment in American universities, we're being joined in by our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, bring us up to speed with what is happening in many of these universities where there are anti-war demonstrations that are being witnessed, and also the role and the manner in which the police has gone about trying to keep order during these protests.
So I will want to talk about the Columbia police that got involved at Columbia University, the NYPD. The NYPD, for the most part, has been praised for, first of all, not creating more chaos, but also by not inflicting any injuries to those protesters who took over that private property, the Hamilton Hall at Columbia University. So that is one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is in the beginning, perhaps these officers were somewhat criticized in some red states, the manner that they were taking protesters away. But then as protests continued to grow, and then there was fears that there are outside agitators and extremists that are guiding these protests, then, it appears that the majority of Americans believe that law enforcement should get involved, not because of peaceful protests and demonstrations. We have to distinguish the two. it's because of vandalism and occupying private property and also anti-Semitic slurs that we've seen throughout these protests. Not all of them, not everyone who's in these protests do that, but when there are at least 10 or 12 agitators in each protest, then something bad eventually is going to happen, as we're seeing in UCLA. I mean, those images of the police clashing with protesters there are something we haven't seen in many years. So we have to wait and see what the outcome of that will be, how the police will be viewed from UCLA. But for the most part, I think people want this to really simmer down as the summer starts.
Right, indeed. And also we just heard from the American president there where he put out a brief statement where he said that peaceful protest is allowed under the American Constitution. It is guaranteed according to the First Amendment there.
Right.
But violent protest is not. But here, of course, is the thing. Is it not the job of the police in different states across the United States of America to ensure that the protests can remain peaceful? Because what has happened, especially in the example of the University of California, it was some of these outside elements who came and created the ruckus, which resulted in the clashes, those very unfortunate scenes that were witnessed.
Yeah, so the problem with what's happening on these campuses is not so much the issue with the police. The issue is that because they're private property and they're not public property, the police can't go in without permission of the administrators of the university itself. And some might argue that UCLA waited too long to call the police in, and the Columbia did as well. But until and unless the university gives permission for the police to go in and start making arrests or quelling the violence, they can't do that. I know we did see images of security just being bystanders watching these horrible infightings at UCLA. It's yet to be seen whether this was from the police department or if it was the campus police themselves that just chose to watch and not do anything as people just went at each other's throat.
Right, at this moment have the security arrangements at these universities been increased? Because what is happened in UCLA should not happen in any other university across the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Columbia that really took the stance in calling the police. That first time that it arrested about 100 students, it really got a pushback from a lot of people. It was the beginning of the protest. And then Columbia sort of stepped aside and let the demonstrators do what they want. And then it got it out of hand again. And I think what you're seeing it as UCLA, it may be the culmination of really what's happening right now. It's hard to imagine that there will be any more chaos more than what we're seeing at UCLA right now.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Susan Tehrani, for joining us and getting us that perspective there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.